What's up, It's your boy Domuto. We're back with another video. Today we're watching Dragon Ball Kakumei, Planet Sadala in Danger. Oh wait, the wrong app pulled up. God damn it. Planet Sadala in Danger, Universe 6 final stand against Salaga. Okay. Salaga. Salaga was cooking them, I ain't gonna lie. But it's been a minute since we watched this story, so you know what I'm saying? Because it's not many left, like two chapters left for the, until they post more on UnrealEnt. So we'll get into it.
As our story now continues back on planet Sadala with both Super Saiyan 2 Kaba and Super Saiyan 3 Caulifla now looking to engage against the venerable heir Sagala. As with everything now beginning to crumble all around both Caulifla and Kaba was when Kaba went on to then respond, "Admiral, how's Pepeño doing?" With the Admiral responding, "His body is severely damaged, but I'm going to try to send him urgently to the Tuffle's laboratory at once," with Caulifla shouting, "We'll take care of this scum, so don't you worry. Admiral Fennel, don't worry about me. He's already taken care of everything," with Fennel asking, "He? But who's he?" To which from out of nowhere, before you know it, as Pepeño's body was now beginning to contort, and from that point then shown having to reveal something very ominous beneath the surface, was when a liquid-based organism was from that point shown having to stretch itself out and removing itself from Pepeño's body, as Pepeño then went on to respond, "Kabiya is his name, and he was created by my father sometime before I was born. Since then, he's been with me everywhere and has evolved directly in my body," Pepeño continues. What an interesting technology, with Pepeño responding, "Yeah, I'm pretty proud of it," to where even with both Kaba and Caulifla being shown having to acknowledge the overall situation in knowing the fact that they have Kabiya on their side, it was only just then from out of nowhere, the moment Salaga had then gone as far as to make their presence known in attacking both Kaba and Caulifla at the same time, was when Salaga had meant business going forward, as Salaga went on to then respond, "Two good slaps to the face to get you all back into the fight." Which, interestingly enough, even despite with Super Saiyan 3 Caulifla going on the attack by being the only one shown having to be the first to strike Salaga, only for Salaga to be shown effortlessly countering Caulifla's punch by being shown grabbing onto her fist, Salaga's overall expression towards Caulifla was by no means any of concern or worry whatsoever, as even despite with Caulifla attempting to knee Salaga, only for Salaga to be shown grabbing onto Caulifla's knee, it did not appear as though things were looking so good for Caulifla until Kaba was shown having to insert himself, was when Salaga then went on to respond, "What's this? Ki doesn't work on me. You will never learn." But ki-based attacks wasn't anything that Kaba was in fact actually aiming for, but instead had only created a bit of time for Caulifla to be shown headbutting Salaga directly in the face, and from that point being shown having to break free from Sagala's vice grip, only for them to go back on the attack again, because the primary goal now for everyone on planet Sadala was, while Vegeta was handling the venerable heir, everyone else's sole duty was to go after Dula and Salaga, which of course were Amaron's underlings. But even this task itself did not seem to come easy even for our heroes, because with Salaga having to play into everyone's hand, no matter what it was that anyone that was opposing Salaga, whether that be Super Saiyan, they
jumping. I like shit. I like a good jump.
Having to be effective enough in stopping him, which really went as far as to demonstrate Salaga's brutality on top of his endurance level as well, because not only was Salaga being shown having to endure several attacks by both Caulifla and Kaba at the same time, but while further having to go as far as to demonstrate the effectiveness of his magic by comparison to the power of both Kaba and Caulifla, it didn't appear as though Salaga was going to get very far against the half Super Origin, half Saiyan hybrid, because even despite with Salaga being shown having to impale this individual in the chest, Salaga from that point quickly went on to realize that this itself was not going to work, as Salaga then went on to say to himself, "Oh, this miserable creature regenerates its flesh at the same speed which I slice it," which one could only go as far as to imagine as to the real power that Salaga is hiding from said individuals, to which we know that he isn't at his full power, at least not yet. But even despite with this strenuous battle being shown having to favor Salaga more so than anybody else, the only individual that Salaga on that battlefield seems to be having trouble with is of course the hybrid. But even with despite Caulifla and Kaba combining their attacks and going after Salaga, was when Salaga went on to then respond, "Oh damn it, who the hell do you all think I am here?" As within the quickness with Kaba and Caulifla combining their attacks and hoping that this was going to be enough to stop Salaga. From out of nowhere, which was something that I personally enjoyed, was seeing Salaga just swoop on in by grabbing both Kaba and Caulifla by the neck, and not only going as far as to demonstrate his superiority by proving that he in fact is stronger than anyone on planet Sadala, but the very second Salaga had gone as far as to notice how a small capsule had fallen out of Kaba's pocket was when Salaga then went on to say to himself, their hearts beat abnormally fast and their eyes seem fixated on this capsule. No, now I see, with Caulifla having to shout, you son, with Kaba having to utter, oh damn, she hasn't mastered her Super Saiyan 3 form yet. Now I see, so this is where you are hiding, Bulma, to which as Salaga was slowly shown having to reach on out by attempting to grab the capsule, it was only just before Salaga even had the opportunity in reaching on over to grab the capsule, which in fact Bulma was indeed hiding in, was when from out of nowhere, that was when Kaba was shown having to punch Salaga in the face by then shouting,
okay,
don't you dare touch Mrs. Bulma, with Salaga uttering, oh, this is useless, Kaba, for my clone is about to destroy your little capsule, but you did your best, so I don't feel bad. I must find the strength, Kaba utters, to which Kaba knew that he could not afford to lose Bulma, who indeed was hiding from all of this to begin with, to which in a spectacular fashion, with Kaba being shown going all out and unleashing his full power onto the surface, it had only now become painfully evident that Kaba was going to do anything and everything to make sure that Salaga wasn't going to reach Bulma, as Kaba from that point then went on to respond, I don't need to stand on my own 2 feet to rip you to pieces.
Okay.
Well, the look on your face is almost
I need this from Kaba. Come on now.
Salaga responds, to which even despite all of this, with Kaba being shown giving it his all in unleashing a gigantic blast towards Salaga, was when Salaga was from that point then shown effortlessly not only having to be shown tanking right through the attack, but it was only done in such a way to which from out of nowhere, that was when Salaga had proceeded in firing off an energy blast that went right through Kaba's chest that barely missed his heart, which ultimately had now resulted in everyone being rendered immobilized, courtesy of Salaga having to beat everyone down by himself, as Salaga then went on to utter, these things tend to happen and you've given it your all, but it just wasn't enough.
Not enough.
To which, shockingly enough, the moment Salaga was from that point then shown having to grab onto this capsule and smashing it within his palm, it had only now appeared as though all hope was seemingly lost, in assuming that Bulma was now dead, until, upon Salaga's success in being shown crushing the capsule within his palm, was when from out of nowhere there was something going on involving Salaga's body, as Salaga had now seemed as though he was binded in place, with Salaga having to then utter, I can't move, what's happening? As of course, to which you've guessed it, Bulma was in fact alive and responsible in having to bind Salaga in place, because even despite with Bulma having to look on over and noticing how the others were down and out, was when Bulma went on to utter, thank you, Kaba, and don't worry, for I will take care of the rest. As seconds later, with Salaga now on the ground and having to look all around him as a voice was seemingly having to speak to him, was when this voice went on to then respond, well, hello there, Master Demon, here's for your favorite target live from the vast lands of Sadala, with Sagala having to shout, you, what have you done to me? With Bulma responding, you thought I was helpless prey, right? And that was your biggest mistake. How could a vulgar earthling trick me like that? Answer me! With Bulma responding,
Bulma got big nuts.
This capsule now that you've crushed it with your own hands, but therefore, there is a voice command to be pronounced in Namekian, which is almost a dead language, but nevertheless, if someone foolishly tries to force the opening or destroy the capsule from the outside, an emergency command will be activated and the assailant exchanges positions with the capsule host. To which ultimately enough, what Bulma ended up doing here was outsmarting the Master Demon by trapping the demon within this capsule, by also reinforcing the fact that if Salaga were to try to break out or do anything of the sorts, then it will ultimately backfire on Salaga, as seemingly enough the way Bulma had framed it, there was no way of escaping this capsule whatsoever outside of using a voice command, with Bulma from that point also shown having to assume early victory, as Bulma went on to then respond, you're imprisoned, miniaturized in this pocket dimension, and I'm safe, so checkmate. In which back on the battlefield, one of the admirals being shown having to oversee Caulifla cough up a pool of blood was when the Admiral was shown quickly rushing towards Caulifla's aid, as Salaga went on to then respond to Bulma by then telling her, well, I must admit it that you had me fooled, but nevertheless, you've chosen the wrong person to lock up. And so do you have any idea on who I am, you ignorant bastard? I am Salaga, the magician known as the Master of Dimensions. It's literally my main specialty, Salaga surprisingly went on to appear behind Bulma by telling her, I can travel through all dimensions, and yes, even the pocket dimensions as you call them. You're definitely not on a lucky streak here, Salaga continues. Just look at you all struggling to stand up, Salaga continues. You've surprised me and I sincerely congratulate you for that, for not many people were able to manage it, but the time has come for us to speed things up, for you've wasted too much of my time. In which, from out of nowhere, before you know it, that was when Salaga was from there shown having to create what seemingly looked as though a portal, and from that point turning the tables on Bulma by having to send her through this portal, but not without the hybrid Kaguya first having to ask the Admiral to lend them more energy, as it looked as though Kaguya was in fact going to be the one to go in and fight Salaga by themselves, with Caulifla even being shown having to garner Salaga's attention by flipping him off and angering Salaga that much more. This had only now become the only window of opportunity for our heroes to capitalize on, because upon the very moment Salaga was too fixated in having to see what Caulifla was doing was when Kaguya had seized this opportunity and having to attack Salaga while he was too busy focusing on Caulifla, with Kaguya even going as far as to reinforce the idea that no one should follow him as to where they're about to go, as elsewhere within a parallel dimension, as soon as Kaguya and Salaga were from that point then shown having to enter inside of this domain, with Bulma being shown having to be captured within the cube, was when Kaguya then went on to spot Bulma by then shouting, you're safe in here, and so I'm going to put an end to this whole charade, with Bulma having to respond, I don't doubt you at all, Pequeño, and your mom would be proud. You fool, you've just signed your death warrants here alone with me in a dimension from which you can no longer escape. With the hybrid responding, yeah, well, don't worry about me, for we're both in a very critical state, so let's get this over with here and now, with Salaga responding, well, if you so wish, in which that was when things began to turn up for both the hybrid and Salaga, because with neither of the two having to let up in this overall situation, in wanting to put the other down once and for all, you can almost go as far as to feel the burden on each of their shoulders, for one party wanting to obliterate the entirety of one planet, while the other was solely going as far as to serve the purpose of protecting the planet and everyone on it, as with the entirety of this battle now seemingly going back and forth within this parallel dimension, it almost had looked as though Salaga and the hybrid were almost fighting on an even playing field, with neither having to get the better significantly over the other just yet, because with all of the access in the world and all of the space to go by, there was nothing that was seemingly holding either party back within this dimension from going all out to begin with, to where by no means was Salaga having any of this as the fight went on to continue, because the moment Salaga from that point went on to power up even more was when Salaga then went on to shout, I am sick of you, for you may be giving me a hard time, but you have no idea on how much magic I've acquired over 403,000 years, and I intend to show it to you. And show it Salaga did, because the moment Salaga from that point was beginning to transform into looking way more demonic than how he was before, it had only become very clear by now that unless the hybrid had more power to him, then by no means was the hybrid warrior going to go very far to begin with, especially with Salaga going all out against him. Salaga had now appeared as though he was in complete control, until afterwards having to spot Bulma in doing something, where Salaga then went on to respond, oh, our dearest scientist is activating her defense mechanisms. You seem to be running out of options, with Bulma questioning, oh, smoking must be toxic then, with Salaga having to chime back in, that should get you out of the door without too much effort. Oh, that bastard literally won't let me breathe, Bulma utters. What kind of smoke surrounds me? As indeed this wasn't in fact smoke, but instead it was Salaga himself, as eerily enough with Salaga attempting to drain Bulma's soul by having to suck the life out of her, was when the entirety of this situation had now become extremely problematic, as Salaga then went on to continue, this here is a very recent technique that you're undergoing, which I had copied from a few creatures that were made of pure energy on planet Bread, who were wandering around with the sole aim of finding anything to feed on, and now you're falling apart. Which even despite with Bulma's energy and soul nearly having to be shown leaving her body, was when the hybrid warrior had then decided that enough was enough and having to channel the powers of Kaguya within him, and from that point using all of this as a means of having to get back at Salaga by finishing him off for good, which had only now resulted in Kaguya having to swoop on in delivering a thunderous shot to Salaga's stomach, which not only went as far as to send Salaga flying out into the distance by also being shown as a result freeing Bulma, but with the two shown going back and forth in a very heated exchange, it didn't appear as though neither of the two, despite using their full power, were going to back down from the other, because with Salaga now having to seize this opportunity and mutating further by growing multiple arms in his attempts of putting down Kaguya for good, was when Salaga had now attempted in using this moment to try and blast Kaguya into a million pieces, but by no means was Kaguya going to let him do this, as Sadala from that point, upon having to witness Kaguya avoid his attacks, then went on to respond, "This bastard recognizes all of my positions so he doesn't end up in the path of my shots. I don't have any other choice. Things are
Salaga, you getting put against the wall. I'm sorry I'm not talking. I'm really interested in this story. I'm really sorry. I'm not talking. I'm like really...
You can't dodge this one or it'll destroy everything in its path and kill you and Bulma. You have no choice but to stop it, so go ahead and grant my wish," as the hybrid responds, "Damn it, I can't lose, not now. They're all counting on me." To which seconds later, within that very moment, as the hybrid warrior was from there shown having to summon the courage in going up against Salaga's attack head on, it almost had now looked as though Salaga was in complete control, as the hybrid warrior was shown struggling, with Salaga then going on to shout, "Oh, give up and let yourself be overwhelmed, for I can even take away your pain if that'll make your choice easier. Salaga, the master of dimensions, you've already lost." To which, as the hybrid was from there shown firing off his final attack, this in and of itself had now proven to be effective enough in not only having to penetrate right through Salaga's initial attack, but it had only now looked as though the hybrid was indeed successful enough in having to pierce right through Salaga's body, as even Salaga himself, who was in a deranged state, went on to recognize this, with Salaga having to utter, "He is not supposed to be able to impact me, but of course it wasn't. He planned it all out. And here we both are at the conclusion," Salaga the hybrid responds, with Salaga having to then utter, "Well done, hybrid. I must admit, you've won," as it was only right then and there now during that moment with Beyond Dragon Ball Super Kakumei
not the hybrid
and 23 specials then come to a close. Now, for those of you out there who are unaware, the Dragon Ball Kakumei team had to take a few months break.
Okay, I'm sorry, I wasn't talking. I'm really interested in that fight. Salaga, hey, you getting cooked? You getting cooked, nigga? You got cooked, nigga. You know what I'm saying? Talking all that shit to Bulma. You let that hybrid pull up on you. Anyway, shout out to Dragon Ball Kakumei and shout out to UnrealEntGaming. Check out the last chapter right here. Check out another story right here. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.